Good evening, dear friends. Welcome to this beautiful evening where Brian has joined us from Colorado Springs, US. And I'm so honored, so privileged to have Brian with us, who's going to be sharing a lot of enlightenment on something that's going to be really very interesting, my dear friends. He is a motivational speaker, co host of Denims and Pearls, which I've been watching and following, and also an expert in business networking and finance. Served 24 years in US Air Force, and he is with us today because he wants to share something that no other episode can give you a thought about. And I'm so glad that he is with me because I could figure out some time from Brian apart from whatever he has in his schedule with Michelle Maras, and I'm so excited, super excited to hold you, Brian. Thanks a lot for joining Deep Talks because it means a lot to me, dear friend, and thanks a lot. So let me have your introduction to our viewers from your side.
My introduction. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for bringing me on or allowing me to come on. This is actually quite an honor, if you will. Um, a little bit of background on me. I have had plenty of experience within the United States Air Force. Did 24 years of that based in the construction fields. Got out, well, prior to getting out, I actually started in the financial business. Did that part-time until I retired from the Air Force. Once I retired, I started to do that financial business, and I still continue to do it, but it was never anything that, like blew up or whatever, because I didn't put as much attention to it as it needs to. So I still do it, and I do it quite a bit. But in the meantime, over the last, since 2009, I guess 11 years, it's been entrepreneurship. I've owned a comic book store. My partner and I own a comic book store. That same partner and I own a comic convention. We've also owned a business networking business, if you will. So we did a lot of business networking around the city. So lots of connections, lots of good things like that. And here we are today with, of course, Denim and Pearls, as you mentioned, with Michelle.
Wow, that's fantastic. And this has been a tremendous time witnessing you host Denims and Pearls. So, may I ask you a question? What makes you start this Denim and Pearls as an inspiration and as something that is actually serving a lot of purpose to the ones who are lost in the business angle? So, what inspired you to bring up this concept of Denims and Pearls, and why the name Denims and Pearls?
Well, first of all, neither one of us, Michelle or I, are denim or pearl. It's the concept. We were sitting on our porch during the beginning of COVID, trying to figure out what we were doing, and I think Michelle was there for a little bit of talking, if you will, to get away from the house and relax a little bit. And so, as we were sitting there on the porch, literally, she came up with the idea, hey, why don't we put this information that we're sharing with each other, why don't we put that out to everybody else? Because we do have, I mean, she says in one of our commercials about 40 years worth of experience, but I'm scared to think of how many it actually is. So we take that information, and I'm a down-to-earth kind of person. I've got a lot of knowledge in a lot of areas. Michelle is, she's got a lot of knowledge and stuff, and likes to have conversation rather than just formal straight talk. And so we put all that together, and there you go. She likes the deep thoughts of it.
Exactly.
We put all that together, and we came up with Denim and Pearls, representing kind of the casual side and the formal side of things, bringing it all together. And of course, from the front porch, where conversations just happen and you don't worry about the formalities.
Wonderful. So, Brian, I would love to ask you, what are the expert tips in, networking? Because people are lost these days, how to connect to people, and there have to be some reasons why you are an expert in the business networking. So, where do you think people are lacking in forming a growth in the business side? An angle which is very important is networking. So, what have you to share with our viewers about networking and why it is named as networking? And do you think it does really work wonders when you are networking? And after that, what next for the growth in the business side?
Right now, we are definitely in a unique situation considering COVID, and we're all having to be locked down and stuff. But there are other means of it. First of all, if you look at our social media, you should have already had your friends before COVID hit. So having those
True.
kind of connections are always beneficial, and having private conversations and stuff. That's just a form of using your network. That's a form of understanding who your network is and who you can ask for help. So, for instance, in my case, I'm trying to do the financial side. And yes, I understand it's difficult sometimes. But on the financial side, all I'm doing is possibly asking a friend, who do you know that could use my help? It's utilizing your
Yeah,
network that you already had done prior to Galaxy or prior to COVID. So utilizing what you already have and then expanding from that. Once you have a client that you've made very happy, ask them who else you can make happy. Who else can I do
true.
this for? So we're not
Wonderful.
completely locked down. It's not like we're locked down in our four square walls and we can't get out. And I mean, if this would have been 20 years ago or 30 years ago and we didn't have Facebook, I guess it was maybe more than 30 years ago. But if we didn't have this opportunity, we just had analog push button phones. It's a matter of picking up the
True.
phone. It's utilizing that network that you're in the tools that we have today.
That's wonderfully stated by you, Brian. It is an awesome experience. Had it not been for technology, we would not have connected. I mean, thanks a lot to Michelle Maras. Thanks a lot, Mudit, for joining and saying hello. And thanks a lot for all the viewers who've joined in with their unconditional love and support on Deep Talks. And I like Brian when he smiles, because it lights up the screen and it makes for the evening. So, Brian, the next question coming on you is, what made you join the United States Air Force? Because we belong to the same background, and I have my father serving the Air Force for almost 23 years. He gave up his wings and then he retired. Now, I think it's more about passion. So, what is your take on it? Has that journey been much better for you, or whatever you are doing right now is giving you more pleasant experience than what it was? So, I would love to know your journey, why you entered the U.S. Air Force, to who you are, and does it really affect the way you are living right now?
Well, that's an interesting question because there's two different versions to this. Um, the first one is how I actually got in, and then the second one is what I believed in and why I stayed. Okay, and then there's the third reason, of course, why I got out. Um, the first reason why we actually went into the Air Force was because had done some prior service to that. I actually did 4 years of Army National Guard in the state of Ohio, and I was learning
Oh
so
my
much. And
gosh.
yes, and I had the experience and the opportunity to go down to a great country, Honduras, so south in Central America, was down there and living in a very hot tent. And if you can imagine Honduras, it's hot. Okay. Um,
Yes, definitely.
so I was down there and I was living in a tent and no air conditioning, none of that. But across the street was Air Force, and they were living in what we called hooches or cabins that had air conditioning. And I did about 3, 4 weeks down there, and I came back to the States, went back to my normal job. Well, somebody had asked me or had mentioned to me and gave me the advice, if you want to know where you're at in your life and where you're going to be, look at the 10 people around you. So I did that. I was standing at my workbench as a welder, and I looked at this guy and I looked at this guy, and I went, 15 years, 18 years, this is not where I want to be. So I thought there was opportunity within the military to do that. So I got done with my shift and I went down to a recruiter and I said, sign me up for 6. I chose Air Force rather than Army because the Air Force lives in air conditioning. Okay.
That is something very cool, Brian, because I love the humor that you're putting across, because I believe that you are the first soul I have been witnessing that you're talking about denims and pearls and you put humor in it. You and Michelle have quite a lot of fun in conversations and they're candid. I love that. So basically that is an immense memories that you are cultivating within your mindset when you were talking about your journey from being in the US Air Force to something that is causing you to expand your business through, being an expert in the business networking angle. Do you think our economy is right now in a bad state? And what are the tips that can be, you know, utilized for making this economy a better economy?
Well, I really honestly don't know, the India economy, but based here in the United States, I don't think our economy is in what I would call dire straits. People are still
Yeah.
spending money. I mean, thank goodness for Amazon in one way, because we can have packages delivered to our house. Okay.
True,
So
true.
from that perspective, now there's a lot of other perspectives you can take, but we have that opportunity to have Amazon deliver to our house. So our economy still continues to roll. However, if you look at small business and the ability not to network, not to get out and meet people, not the ability to not talk to other people, it's really tough if you have a stay-at-home business. If you're a restaurant, for instance, or a retail sales space, it becomes a whole different dynamic depending on which state you live in, which city you live in, whether you're open, whether you're partially open. There's lots of different dynamics. Those who have been locked
Oh,
down and shut down, it's terrible because who's paying
oh,
for their employees? Who's paying for the rent? Who's paying for the utilities? Who's paying to put food on the table, not only of the owner but of the employee? And of course, that also affects across the board. Who's the owner of the building? Who's supposed to be collecting the rent in order to pay for the rent or the mortgage? Okay, so it
exactly.
has a very big domino effect from that perspective. But from the truest perspective of us sitting at home looking at what is the economy like, it's not
Yeah,
tragic. It could be worse. Okay. So there is
it
some
could be
positive things
worse.
out there. Right. And if you're an investor, it's a point of looking for those things that are taking advantage of what we have today and our situations that we're in. So lots of factors, and I could not get down to specifically what something should be.
I totally agree on that score that we are not in a tragic position. We can still manage, and a lot has been granted by Lord above, and we are living a better life. So,
Mhm.
what is your take on, being a motivational speaker, Brian? Because I believe there are a lot many souls who do not get up to the stage because they have a lot of fear in their mindset, right? So, being a motivational speaker takes a lot of courage. Do you think courage is really very important apart from having the confidence and the mindset to be on the stage to conquer what you want to say about your life or about your business or something that can influence a lot many souls across the globe? Do you really think being a motivational speaker is really important these days?
Is it important to be one? Is that your question?
Yeah. Yes.
I think it is important because we have to look outside of ourselves. When people are sitting behind their computer and they're seeing information coming across, if there's no motivation there, then what's the interest? If I'm working on my business and
Exactly.
all I'm doing is sitting behind a computer and I'm dealing with, I hate to say this, but I'm dealing with my family is not always the most motivational. And I'm not talking about mine, I'm just talking about in general. Most families are not inspirational
Yes.
to each other. So it makes it difficult. And one of those reasons why Michelle came to our front porch, okay? Her environment
Yeah.
wasn't exactly what she needed. Um, it wasn't exactly what she needed at home, so she comes to the front porch. Not that she's lacking at home. That's not what I mean. It's just, you
Michelle,
know,
if you're hearing this, look at Brian, what he's talking about.
I'm sure she does. Well, we all understand too. If you go back to relationships, you've heard that opposites attract, right? So,
True.
right. So opposites attract. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting that feedback from your partner the way that you need to get that feedback from a crowd, for instance. So then depending on
Exactly.
whether you're
Very right.
introverted or extroverted.
True. So I would love to ask you what I haven't asked anybody, Brian. What are the cons of being a business expert in financial angles? Like, we have to weigh the pros and cons. There are professional cons on each side of any profession. So, what is it that you feel is the negative side of being a business expert in networking and finance?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
I will repeat the question. I mean,
Okay.
every profession has a negative side to being there.
Mhm.
So, being a business expert, what all have you to say about that? I mean, being a financial expert, you must have had lows, and what are those lows that you faced, and how one can overcome them?
Right. Well, I think they're all. Yeah, I see what Michelle says, and she says it probably a little better than I did. I said introvert, extrovert. Okay, and
Yeah.
she loves an audience, and I'm the same way. I love to inspire people. I love to be talking to somebody, but I also love the feedback. Okay, so we covered that. As far as the pros and cons, I think there's pros and cons of any business. I don't care what your business is,
True.
because everything in life is a give and a take. There's a positive for a negative or a negative for a positive. We could take that into the forces of good and evil. There's so many different directions that we could do. So when it comes to our businesses, there's always positives and negatives. We always have a reason, just as Michelle and I talked about the other day. We have reasons to celebrate, even if they're small. We have reasons to celebrate on a very small scale or a large scale, and move on to the next task, on to the next project, or as a speaker, on to the next person who can utilize that input, if you will.
Wonderful. That has been enormously enlightening for the viewers. Michelle Moraz has quite rightly stated, I'm a talker. My husband is very quiet. I love an audience. And that's wonderful, Michelle. Gurdev has said, I love deep talks and Soch Ki Uran, Daish Ke Naam. That's wonderful, Gurdev. Thanks a lot for joining. Gargi Halder, she's a visually impaired soul, and I love her because she's my friend. Thanks a lot for joining and throwing in a lot of unconditional love. I hope all the souls who watch this conversations, they take away something that Brian has to talk about and share with us. So Brian, apart from that, can you mention some of your childhood memories where you always cherish them even now till date and you've learned a lesson from them?
Oh my. I don't have any extravagant emotional connection to some of my experiences, but I will give you two of them really quick. One of my first lessons that I learned as a child actually came from when I was riding my bike. And you know how you put the cards in your spokes and you go as fast as you
Yes,
can.
exactly.
I did that going downhill and on a road that's a T. And when I turned the corner, my bike went one way and I went the other way. It was
The other
rough.
way.
So can we take that as a
I can
lesson?
understand.
Yeah. So some of that is a lesson. Yeah. Don't overdo what you've got. You know, there are limitations to
Oh,
certain things. I mean, you could really get deep into doing something like that. Now, another one that I've
true.
actually story that I've used was when I was a child. I can't say how old I was. I don't know. I must have been in like kindergarten, so 6, 7 years old maybe. And
Oh my gosh.
my mom always took care of me, right? She did the dishes and she
Yeah.
made my breakfast and she did my made my bed. Well, I got cocky one day and I said, "No problem. I'm going to make my bed." So I got done making my bed. I went out to the kitchen for my breakfast, and I was all proud of myself. And mom is like, "So what's up with the proudness?" I said, "Well, I just made my bed." She's like, "Well, that's a good
That's
job."
fantastic.
Well, here's the kicker to the whole thing. She hasn't made my bed since.
That's wonderful. That is a lesson that's learned that we have to be independent in life. So, jokes apart, Brian, there was something that made me think about why a shift from all these areas to comic convention and having a comic store. Because you mentioned that you have a comic store to yourself. So what made you start that idea as well? I mean, I'm sure that you love kids and or you love the characters, and somewhere Denims and Pearls also has come out from that angle where comic has a lot of idea behind this concept and putting humor in the business side and letting people know something. So what made you start this comic store?
Well, it opportunity. That's the easiest way to look at it. Prior to that, I wasn't a big comic book fan. I mean, I liked the Marvel heroes and the superheroes and those kind of things. I like to go to the movies, but that's kind of where
Oh.
it stopped. But my partner and I saw, we actually had a comic convention first, and we saw an opportunity
Wow.
in that in order to basically put the fans in front of something that they enjoyed. And the person who owned it at the time, we were good friends with. Well, sadly, he passed away, and
Oh,
his
sad.
spouse came to us and said, "Can you help me?" Well, once we did that the first time, and I'll keep a lot of the details out, but once we did that the first year, we turned around and we had another discussion with her the second year, and we decided to go ahead and continue on doing the exact same thing. So my partner and I, and it was mostly my partner who found this opportunity, we decided that there was a big opportunity there. And so we went through everything that we could do. And in the long run, it didn't work out. The numbers weren't working out. There were
Oh.
opportunities here and there so the convention went away. In 2019 was its last year. So it went away from logical standpoint, but the thing that we really miss was, or is, the fans. Okay. The fans were the
Oh.
biggest thing about it. It's about making people happy. It's about them expressing themselves within cosplay and things like that. In other words, dressing up, if you don't know what that is. So that was fantastic. Well, back up just a little bit, and within that time frame, looking for sponsors and vendors for the event, we went to a comic book store. My
Okay.
business partner inadvertently, or maybe on purpose, I don't know, but she's like, if you ever decide to sell the store, and I'm like, looked at her like, are you crazy? What are you talking about? Well, needless to say, 2 weeks later, he sent us an email and said, I want to sell the store. So
Oh, wow.
again, opportunity in a tourist town, in a great area. One of the only things like that of its kind in that area, it looked like a great opportunity. Well, 2.5 years later, the numbers logically did not make sense again. So
That's fantastic. That is superb. And that's an opportunity that knocked and you just took the call. That's wonderful. Apart from that, Brian, what do you think a healthy relationship should consist of? Because you've been married over a long period of time. So I would love to know from you because you've been talking about business and everything from finance to everything that is about comic, and I would love to ask you this because this is a show on love and relationships and about a lot more because people do not talk openly about such topics which I'm airing. And this is because I'm a psychologist and I feel the importance of mental health awareness and wellness is something that needs to be taken care of. And I feel that when people talk and express themselves, they air out what they actually keep inside, and then a lot many diseases happen and people run to the hospitals in the later age, and it's bad, it's very worst. Like an example of pandemic where people could not contain the talks within, and they started talking and voicing out, many platforms emerged. So what is keeping you on with your work, and how pandemic affected you, if it might have affected you? I might ask you that question as well. So this is my question to you.
in certain dynamics, I think the importance of love and relationships, and when you're talking personal love and relationships, and when you're talking business, you've heard
Yes.
married to your job or married
Yes.
to your business. Well,
Yes.
guess what? You're married to your wife or you're married to your
Yes.
husband. It's You've got to have a love to deal with both of them. So the loves may be a little bit different, but if you put too much time into your business, you can also turn around and mess up your personal relationships or with your spouse or what have you, or vice versa. If you're too concentrated on your spouse or your, whoever that lover may be or what have you, um, your business can suffer. So we have to balance that love for either one of them. Okay.
True.
And of course, our partners have to be accepting of the fact that you've got to share some of that love, if you will, or give that different love to your business. Because if you don't concentrate there, then nothing can happen. So I think it's all this, in a way, is all the same.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, Brian, yours is a love marriage or was it an arranged match?
It was a love marriage. We actually met, my wife and I met in Japan. She's from Minnesota in the States.
Wow,
And one of my first duty stations was in Japan. And we met
that's
over
wonderful.
there and we got married a year later. And then um, a year after that, we turned around and got remarried. So we had come home into the States and had the full blown wedding. Um,
Yeah.
and then 2 years later, our first child, which was my son, and then 2 more years
Wow.
later, then it was my daughter. And now
Wow.
30 years later, we're both retired and trying to fix my front yard. you know?
That's wonderfully stated. Yeah, that's so nice to hear because there are very few couples who are always laughing and sharing the deepest of secrets on the show like Deep Talks Virtual Reality on Love and Relationships. Apart from that, Brian, it's been wonderful to have you and taking the conversations forward. Which has been that one achievement in your life that you are very proud of and you would love to share with our viewers?
I don't know if I can. Well, okay, I'll give you one, but it's all encompassing. I mean, I don't look at
Exactly.
specific events that I'm so proud of. Yes, I'm proud to be married to my wife. I'm proud to have my kids, each one of them separately, of course, because they weren't twins. Um, but it,
That's always coming in as a fun angle to Brian because when you are hosting Brian, you cannot forget laughter, my dear friends. It is always important.
very, very important. But I think overall, I started off. Part of my story is, and some people don't know this story, but I started off with like $114 in my pocket when I left the house when I was 18, and
Oh,
now after basically a full career, if you will. Well, it was a full career, a full career, a wife, two kids. I can't tell you how many houses and cars later, I'm still where I'm at, and everything. That's I think probably one of my biggest accomplishments or proudest accomplishments that I've never found myself begging. I haven't
yes.
found myself in a very such a bad situation that I couldn't get out of it, because I look at everything from a logical standpoint, and I like to have fun with everything, and everything is a learning opportunity. So if I'm
That's
going to be
commendable,
proud of
Brian.
something, it's proud of my life, I guess.
Yeah, that's commendable because I have hosted many souls and no one stated that I am proud of having my wife, my kids, and the life I'm living today. Because there are lot many souls who are in distress, lot many souls who are grieving about what they've lost than what they have in life. I believe no pain, no gain. One has to undergo a lot of struggles to, be the person who one is right now. But most important is that you need to relish your current state. Very few souls are contented on this planet.
Hmm.
So, what is your take on living apart from the taboos that we are holding in our mindsets? A lot many taboos are there in different cultures. So I am breaking few of the taboos by talking about bold topics, Brian. Do you think they are needed in this modernistic concept of where parents should talk freely to their kids about sex education and even partners should talk about everything that's troubling them because somewhere cancer, diseases like cancer, and people are committing suicides, and a lot many things over the breakups are happening. People are falling to substance abuse. So, do you think barriers should be broken to talk about these topics so that people don't fall in deep depression?
I think if somebody has the opportunity to be spoken to and willing to learn, of course, I believe that the fact that something can change. However, if they're not educated that something is wrong, they're bound to fail. And it also
Yes,
depend the perspective of failure is different in everybody. Just because somebody has a drug problem, yes, it's not good for
yes,
society. It's not good for their health. But you know what? Maybe that it's good for them. It's
true.
really a different perspective. It's kind of where they put themselves. If they're not educated on the fact that it's just like if you go on stage, you know, where there's plenty of, let's call them talent shows on TV out there. If you've been told all
True.
your life that you're a great singer and you're not, you're happy to go on stage and just belt out the worst thing there is. However, if
Very right.
you're told that you're awesome and you go on stage and you are awesome, that's fantastic. But if you don't know that you're bad, how can you make a decision that you're bad? Now, do we need to
Exactly.
do
Right.
we need to talk to our kids? Do we need to talk to our friends? Do we need to talk to other business owners? Things like that when they're having a problem and an issue and help them get through it? Yes, definitely. I definitely believe that we need to do things like that. Um, because we
True.
can educate. It's just like in my financial world, there's people who make financial decisions without being educated. When I come in and educate them,
Exactly.
we find out that it's different. Okay. So now some of the things you brought up the word taboo. Is it
Yes,
I don't know if it's necessarily taboo that I'm sitting here in in Colorado talking to you in India. I don't know if that's taboo. However, if I
exactly.
don't know any better, I can only make that judgment call based on my education. Okay. So if I don't know that
True.
you're a great person, why would
True.
I talk to you? Okay. We found out that
Exactly.
Gurleen's a great person and she's fun and she likes to have this and she likes to share her information. Great. Well, we wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't for, this thing in front of me, this computer, so yeah,
True.
it's a little different perspective and I don't always get as serious, but I think if we look at things from a broader angle or a flyover view, sometimes it makes things a little easier to chew.
That's so nice. And Michelle is correctly stated. Brian's humor is a huge bonus to a Denims and Pearls podcast. We learn and laugh on every conversation. Woohoo! Wonderful
Yay.
man. And we make decisions from our level of awareness at the moment we make a decision. That's so wonderfully stated, Michelle. Thanks a lot for joining and remaining with us. With your love and guidance and support, Brian and me are holding a conversation. I love his smile, and so do I love when you both host the podcast that's Denims and Pearls. So I'm so excited to even talk and continue this conversation because it's an honor for me to hold Brian. So Brian, apart from that, I would just love to ask you that do you think media plays a very important role in business? And if yes, then how?
Again, it goes back to, I think really and truly that same question kind of goes back to um, education. We're looking at the media outlets as our to educate us on what's going on in the world. We look at them for that information that we believe to be tried and true. Okay, so if you look at one station with one opinion, that's all you're gonna believe, and that's all you're gonna know, and that's all you're gonna understand if you don't pick up a newspaper or pick up any other kind of thing that's going on out there. I say newspaper because I am old, but there are still newspapers out there. But look at the internet. If you whatever, looking at different sources from different perspectives will help you get educated more. But when you sit and look at one specific station, that's all you get. You educated only on one perspective.
True. That is wonderfully stated by Brian. Whereas Gargi has just stated, please, guys, from the whole universe, please respect Ms.Gurleen Khokhar. She gave me a new life yesterday when I was about to lose my life. Oh, thanks a lot for honoring me with these words, Gargi. She's a living God for me. I love you countless. And feel free to contact and call Gurleen for resolving any type of issues. Oh, that's wonderfully stated, Gargi Halder. We love you. And no one should die with certain thoughts that they are hopeless. I feel that,
Oh no.
Brian, people don't ask for help. Somewhere people resist in asking for help, and they don't move, they don't take the initiative to start their life. So do you think stagnation in any kind of profession is harmful for the growth of an individual? I do agree on it, whether it's personal or professional. Stagnation in life is not the calling for progress in life.
Hmm. Yes, I would 100% agree. And let's put it as an example. I'm actually helping my mom. Okay, I've helping my mom because she's had some health issues and things like this. Well, what that allows me to do is it allows me to sit in a chair and keep an eye on her and accomplish things on the computer. Inactivity.
Yes,
Okay, so
true.
now if I put the computer to the side and I stand up, what happens? My back might struggle a little
Uh,
bit. My knees might struggle. There's stiffness in this and there's stiffness in that. So what was it? I was stagnant. My muscles weren't doing anything for the
true.
last hour or 2 hours. Well, same thing. I think if you take that perspective and you can take that out and you can put it also into your business, you can put it into your life. If you're going to sit in the basement, figuratively speaking, if you're just going to sit in the basement and live between four walls, well, guess what? Your business is probably not going to do anything. If you don't go out and network, if you don't go out there and share your knowledge with somebody, it's not, your business is going to become stagnant. Same way goes with, your relationships. If you ignore those
True.
relationships and think that social media is the answer to it, rather than maybe picking up the phone, even if it's long distance, if you think that sitting in front of the computer and using social media is your answer to moving relationships forward, I'm sorry, you're probably not. You're just not right. It's that simple.
Yeah,
You've got
yeah.
to have that
I totally
interaction.
agree on Brian. Yeah, I totally agree on the concept of the approach that one has to actually narrow down on. And apart from that, do you think prioritizing the schedule and management of time is an important factor in the growth of business? Because I do agree on this, and I feel most of the individuals, Brian, they lack time management and they procrastinate to suffer in the business, and they do not ask for help, which I already mentioned before. So, do you really think that time management and prioritizing the schedules is really an important facet in the growth of the business?
Of course it is. I mean, if not only prioritizing your time in order to grow the business, even if you don't look at it from that perspective, if you look at it from the perspective of your customers, if you have a customer who says, what time are you open? I'm open at 9 o'clock. Well, if every day I come into work and I don't open until 9:15, or maybe I open at 8:30, or maybe I open at 10:15, is that customer going to be happy with you? Probably not, because they want to come in at
Not.
9 o'clock. Okay. So timing and scheduling has got to be a priority, or at least one of the priorities, because there's a lot of them. There's got to be a priority just for time management alone, just for your customers. And if your customers are unhappy with you, then look at yourself. Are you happy with your scheduling? Are you getting things accomplished?
Yeah.
And I'm the last one to talk about procrastination, except for in the fact of its positiveness. But,
that's
procrastination is in some
that's
of our blood,
fantastic.
but do you have to
Yeah,
schedule
that's
it? Do you have to have
fantastic.
time for it?
Uh, yeah, Brian, I would love to have 5 tips that can make someone's business improve a lot in an angle where they have lost hope. So the 5 important tips that they can utilize so that they can be good in their business.
Okay, I lost you there for a second. So the 5 tips that they can be good in their business was your question.
Yes.
5 tips. Okay. Usually it's only 3. We'll have
Wow.
to
Add the 2 from your side.
Well, you already struck on one. I do believe that time management is of the essence. Okay. Honesty and sincerity, which I'll leave as one option. Honesty and sincerity within your business, within yourself, and within your customers is always, you've got to have that. Another thing too is learning your field, understanding your field. If you're not an expert in your field, then why are you there? Okay, we've got a lot of self-proclaimed coaches out there. Well, what makes them a coach?
True.
Okay, when I look at it from the perspective, if I'm a finance guy, I'm an expert in it. Why? Because one, I've been doing it for 20 years. Two, I look at it, I've been trained. And three, I have to be licensed all the time. Well, there are people out there that all of a sudden they lose their job and now they're a coach. Okay, so you've got to do it. Yeah. And if you're going to be that, and you got to fake it till you make it, great. But you also got to fake it until you know it. You have to understand what you're doing, be educated on what you're doing, okay? Because everybody's going to find out later that you're not, okay? Another one would be also, if you're dealing with business partners, it goes with the business partner relationship is almost the same as, your romantic relationships. You still have to have give and take.
Oh, I love that.
You have to respect each other. And two people will grow a business much faster and easier than one person will do it alone. But in the same process, you also have to respect each other. Have to respect each other. Just look at a band, for instance. We're all fans of music and those kind of things. Don't matter what your music is. But if you look at a band, bands are together, they have a great hit, and then they break up before they have the next hit. But why do they break up? It's not because they had success. It's because success went to somebody's head and they're not all cooperating anymore. So they all go their different ways. Tip number 5, let's see. Enjoy it. Have fun. If you're not enjoying it and having fun and like what you do, you might want to think of a different opportunity. But if you're loving it and you enjoy it, you can take it on a little bit easier and longer than you normally would if you just went, it's a business.
That is so cool and wonderfully stated tips by Brian. And I'm sure the viewers are watching. They would love to know that Brian is an interesting soul for the business knowledge, and he's having a wide experience about business. And he's not talking something that's nonsense. He's talking something sense, because even nonsense says it's having sense. So, on that angle, I would love to ask you, Brian, that do you think the concept of the virtual stages where like I'm conducting one is kind of going to grow in the coming times and help people connect to each other and communicate so that their business grows, and not only their business, but they're doing a service back to the globe? Do you think working on these grounds is really very essential, not only for the growth, but for the betterment of the globe?
I would say yes as a general concept. But I would also say no, is because there's no human interaction right here in front of us. We can take away that human interaction between you and me at this moment. But it's not the same if I could walk up and give you a big hug. Okay?
Yeah.
So it's a yes and it's a no answer. Do I think it's going to get to a point where it's going to be able to be a substitute for that? No, I don't think it'll ever do that, no matter how good the graphics are, the HD and the Super HD and all those other kind of things. Is it a substitute? But is it a tool in order to reach across the oceans? And in like they used to say in the old days, to reach across the pond, okay? I think it's a beautiful tool. I would have never thought 6 months ago that I would be talking to you. I never thought 6 months ago I would be talking to somebody in India or France or Germany. I think it's going to be able to bring us together as a world, as a whole, and be able to understand each other. Okay? Doesn't mean we're going to be able to understand that you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm wrong and you're right, because we're always going to have that conflict there. But I think it's going to give us an appreciation for other cultures, for other dynamics that we never thought of before in our life. In other words, we're going to be educated on what we have. So it's a very positive thing.
That's wonderfully stated, Brian, because that is something that's very practical and that's very pragmatic to talk about, that it is bridging the cultures and the love, and you know each other, you connect and you communicate, you come to know about the other person. I never knew that while Michelle will be my friend, and from where we are going to connect through Gary to Beata to Brian, and it has been a wonderful journey. So before we end this conversation that has been fantastic till now, I would love to ask you some funny moments out of your own experience in life that you would love to share that you haven't shared with anyone on any platform, even with Michelle.
that becomes
That's a tough
interesting.
one. That's a tough one.
It is. It is. A funny moment that I haven't already shared online. Um, well, I won't say. I'll give you one that I thought was hilarious in my life, and my wife or my daughter will kill me for this one. you know, but it's just one of those things that it's kind of a lesson learned from her perspective, but as a dad, it was very extremely humorous. We were actually at one of the big, well, we were at Disneyland, let's put it that way. And my daughter was I don't know if she was quite a teenager or she was a teenager, but she had those, you remember those things called Heelys, where it
Yes,
had the wheels in the heel? She ran
yes.
off across the parking lot. I'm going to this roller coaster ride, which happened to be, I believe it was Batman. She heads out
Okay.
across the concrete there. She goes just, as fast as she can go on her heelys. She hits a bump and she does a Superman. So she did a Superman going to a Batman ride. So she was
Oh
okay.
God.
I will state the fact that she was fine, but it is something the story I've never told online, and
Oh
it
my
was an
gosh.
experience for her that as she's going, I'm going, you need to slow down, you need to slow down, and then of course after I found out she was all right, it was like the most hilarious thing on the planet.
God, that is fantastic experience as a dad watching your daughter, and it becomes hilarious because when you see your daughter growing, I'm sure that these experiences and these memories are going to be cherished forever. And thanks a lot, Brian, for sharing such an honest confession and a humorous experience on Deep Talks Virtual Reality on Love. Because Michelle said good luck. I mean, for sharing such an experience, she was sharing good luck to you because probably I need to connect to Michelle after this. How many experiences have Brian shared during the Denims and Pearls podcast? Because I assume that you're holding these talk shows for a lot of goodness. So, do you think that you managed connecting to people over the business when since you have started this podcast?
Yeah, I think we have got a lot. Michelle and I have received a lot of feedback for Denim and Pearls. um, People love the fact that we're straightforward, the fact that the information is really good information to be shared. People love the fact that Michelle and I we mesh real well. I can say a sentence and she can finish it. It's not like
Exactly.
a personal relationship where oh, she's the wife and she's finishing my sentences again.
Thanks for clarifying that here.
It's not the same. Michelle and I are not married to each other. We are married, but not to each other. But and I had the
I
same
like that.
situation with my business partner, my other business partner also. But with Denim and Pearls, the information, Michelle is, she has seen a whole different world that I've never seen. But we relate very well together because we have a lot of commonalities. Then I've got, my experiences and my humor, and I don't like formalities. I'm not a person with a suit and tie. It just, why do I want to
It
hear from a
doesn't
guy
suit
that's all
you. Doesn't
stuffy?
suit Brian.
Right? If there is a picture of me with a suit and tie on, and I look good. Okay, don't get me wrong, I look
Exactly.
good, but it's not
You
me.
look good. Yeah, that's not you. That
I,
is so nicely stated, Brian. I am so impressed with the conversations tonight because this makes me think about how honest a person can be in knowing the true picture of one's work and how one can be comfortable with one's own skin and self. Do you think, before we leave this conversation, that importance of being honest is actually very demanding?
Restate that again, please.
Being honest is really tough and demanding. Do you think I'm right?
To a certain degree. Yeah, it can be, but usually truth, when truth is demanding, it's because it wasn't right in the first place. Okay? I mean, if
Oh
you've got to
gosh, you
expend
always make me laugh.
if you have to expend your truth to your wife and it's hard, well, guess what? You were probably wrong in the first place. So now you have to tell
Exactly.
the truth. But
I love that.
if you're truthful all the time, whether it's in business or relationships or whatever it is, if you're truthful all the time, there shouldn't be any expectations of being hurt, either you or the person that you're telling the truth to.
True.
So
True.
honesty is what's the saying? Honesty is the best something.
Policy.
Okay. Policy, yes. And I do believe it is. But if we go through life, not everything is perfect and we don't always remember things exactly the same. So we want to be as
True.
truthful as we can possibly be in all of our stuff that we do. But sometimes that truth hurts
Wow.
because it wasn't right in the first place. You shouldn't
Yeah.
have done what you did.
Woo! That is wonderful. Thanks a lot for Vijay Aman to say happy souls. Yes, we are enjoying our conversations, though not as fantastic as Michelle and Brian holds up Denims and Pearls. So all the ones who are watching, they need to watch Denims and Pearls as well and have their burst of laughter around their candid conversations. Definitely in the courtyard as they hold their conversations in the front porch. So I believe that I have been following them and you all need to follow them because somewhere you have a lot to learn from these two fantastic, superb, terrific souls full of energy. And I'm sure that this conversation, Brian, you enjoyed. But I would love to, ask you one thing that what would be that one sentence that you would love to share with our viewers to, enlighten them about this conversation tonight? And what makes you feel contented and happy about who you are today?
I think that's actually one and the same. I think you have to be happy with yourself. You have to be happy with what you're doing. The viewers out there, you can't go through life blaming everybody. You can't be going through life going, oh, woe is me. If you have a situation or a challenge, face it. Maybe face it with a little
True,
bit of humor, because humor is our best medicine, correct?
true.
So
That's
we go,
wonderful.
yeah, so go out and enjoy what you do, even if there are people who are in the down times, whether it's
Yes,
depression or like that. They've got to find that thing to pick them up. So my word of advice, even over this entire show that we've done today, is find a way to be happy. That doesn't always mean the extremes of getting rid of your spouse because she doesn't make you
true.
happy. That's not what I'm talking about. What makes you smile? Is it your children that make you smile? Is it something on the internet that makes you smile and relax? Find something of humor, find something that is positive, and then all the other things will come with it and will carry forward, if you will, and be a lot better. And when you look at a life as fun,
Yeah, it indeed is.
it
It
rubs
indeed
off on
is
people.
because it is fun. We are having fun.
So
Michelle is there typing in her angles. Follow us. And then she has shared our Denims and Pearls podcast YouTube page. My dear friends, all of them, please follow them because they are hosting a splendid, terrific show that is a virtual podcast that you need to listen to understand what it really means. Because till you actually connect to people whom you would love to, and I'm sure that even in your low phases, if you connect to someone like Brian, you would actually take away from him the funny moments and all those conversations that are going to turn your life upside down for the moment that the door states, if there is a knock, please open your mind to learn something from someone across the globe. And I totally feel and agree on that note. I'm not as good as Michelle, but I'm sure that I hosted you well. So one tip for the host, and then we end the conversation, my dear friend Brian.
Before I give the tip, if you will, I will also give another tip also. I talk a lot
Wow.
about enjoying things. I talk a lot about fun. I talk about smiling. I talk about a lot of that, but it's not always a joke.
Yeah.
There's times when you have to be serious in order to deal with certain situations. But if you help take a positive spin on things, it makes it a lot easier to deal with them. Okay. So,
True.
with you,
That's
open, I'll go back to the same thing with Gurleen. It's been fun. It's been fantastic. And continue doing what you're doing. I know Michelle's been
thanks.
helping out with some things too on the back end, which is really cool. She's a
Yes.
great person to take advice from.
Yeah.
So just explore the possibilities out there. And I think your market has been opening up quite a bit, whether
Yeah.
it's from the States or if it's from India or wherever. If it,
True.
I don't know if you're dealing with China or
Yeah.
what have you.
I've just recently become an author. Just recently. Michelle knows about it.
Awesome. So, look at those advantages and always keep in mind you're there to learn from somebody else. You're not always there to
Yes.
share what you know.
Yes.
That was
And
deep. I
thanks
like
a
that one.
lot, Brian, for holding this time for me, because this was something coming in from Colorado Springs and not from Denver, my dear souls. When he pointed out in the flyers, let me mention, we corrected. He is from Colorado Springs, and I'm sure that there is a lot that needs to be understood only when you follow their page. And I'm sure that you would love their conversations because they're two souls on fire when they talk. So you need to know from where I'm also having that fire on. And I'm sure you are all going to love Brian and Michelle hosting Denims and Pearls. Thanks a lot, Brian, for joining Deep Talk's virtual stage of love and relationships. Bye bye.
Bye. My pleasure.